Hi, class. Welcome to this short summary of the information in Chapter 6 Religious Organization and Beliefs. This will not be an exhaustive presentation because, for the most part, all the details are spelled out, detail after detail, in the chapter. There's not as much big picture stuff to go over. And so make sure you read chapter 6 well and fit it into this presentation, which is giving you the bigger picture. And before I even turn a slide, I want you to know the bigger picture is that not all Altepets believed exactly the same way. There was certainly a lot of similarity. The Some of the details of this chapter are the Mexica version, and if you cross the lake to another Altepet, maybe 100 miles, 50 miles to the north, there might be slightly different. But there would be a lot of similarities, and certainly the number one similarity, as we're still looking at a Tark screen, as if creation has not happened yet, but that there emerges from some sort of central divine power or two more of them that's kind of floating in the air. But then, as these many divinities produce more divinities, then the world is a complicated cosmology. It's not a very simple or black white one. There are gods and goddesses that do a variety of actions, but you're never quite sure, and sometimes they're capricious. And if you combine what you are going to do on one day with what you might do a week from now, then the items might not be aligned. Again, I'm trying to show you that it became an incredibly complex set of focus points about what was going on religiously in the Aztec Empire for those last 100 years. But we do want to give you some help, so here we go. At the very beginning, it's a short introduction, but an important event in some ways because it will kind of give you an oversight of how they see divinity and the natural world connected, and then you as the member of your Alta pet or family. There were 13 numbers and 4 symbols: flint, reed, house, flower. And when you put those together, as I've mentioned before, I won't be doing these well, let me refer to something and do them in a better order than I almost just did. And if you go from 1 house to 2 rabbit to 3 flower to 4 flint, you are in one of the 13 cycles that go in that order. And so, as you can hear me getting towards, you take the number 13 and 4 symbols, and it takes 52 years to recycle that. And in one of the years, to read, as you can see at the bottom of the screen, in to read on Aztec manuscripts, you will see this little added symbol, and it is the new fire ceremony. Still sticking with the tiny one there at the bottom, there in to read, and the makers of the codex have added information that that's when the new fire ceremony was. So according to the idea that's handed down, and whether people were cheating or not, we'll never know, but all fire was extinguished in the empire. And fire, of course, was very important because your household ran on food that was cooked with that fire, which was going at all times, well, except once every 52 years. And so they would take this fire away from the empire, and where the temple was built, at least according to their reckoning, everyone in the empire could look to the temple and see it. Now, on top of that temple, there was a human being who was going to be a human sacrifice, and the priests in charge of that ritual opened them up. And according to what we're left, the information we're left with, of course, inside the sacrificial victim's chest, a new fire was created. As far as the specifics of that, we don't have any, and so you can kind of try and figure out how they would do that if they could do it at all. But that is, of course, religiously what is definitely happening. And see, that's a holy fire then, and then that fire is handed person by person, kind of like a candlelight vigil you may have been to, but the fire goes out to the same fire out to every single household, and it is, again, religiously holy in a way for the next 52 years. Okay, so that's an interesting story. It introduces you, one, to the 52-year cycle, how they saw that, and we'll go to more calendars in a bit. Also, when you're just reading through the first few pages, you begin to run into, two kind of original gangster gods, and then you see they kind of break off into others. Some of them you will have heard of, like Quetzalcoatl. Others you perhaps haven't. And in these first few pages, and up here on the screen, we can see one version of the origin stories of the creation stories. It happens to be the one made by the Mexica in Tenochtitlan. And in these occasions, and if you were to look at the others, again, you would find a complicated development of the earth into its various entities that now exist, now being in 1450. The book also introduces you to their understanding of horizontal space, as the book author calls it, and this means that at the Templo Mayor in Spanish, a version of it is down below, that the empire was divided into 4 zones, and following north, south, east, and west. And so these would be the directions that are created and how they would see the empire in a certain way. The north and west might have these qualities, while the south has that quality, and so on and so forth. Again, they would understand that certain regions would do better in some years than others, and it depended on which zone you were and what year it was and what the other calendars were saying. They also envisioned a vertical space where there's above and below Earth. And, the book gives us all the names. I think, learning every name isn't going to be helpful for you to learn about their society. But you understanding that they saw, up to 9 planes vertical of becoming better than the Earth or more divine in a good way. And then they also saw 9 layers below the Earth, the last one being Mictlan, which we've talked about before. Then you can kind of see how this is all fitting together. So we started with the complicated world that is harsh. You can't really know your future. The complexity of the feelings and the actions of gods against others, and so on and so forth. They see the world certainly as a precarious place. And so learning about these gods and what to do for them, which becomes a major part of Tenochtitlan's developments as the imperial center. Right? If you go out to the edges of the empire, they too will have a religious organization with rituals and the like. But you'll find that it is less complex what you have to do to satisfy them, and that's not really the same here in Tenochtitlan. So, knowing the gods, then, as you go through them, I'm just going to review some of the major ones. Most of these are mentioned, some of them are not. All right, definitely at the top of the list of gods in power and importance and reverence would be Huitzilopochtli. That you can see how to spell it down there and how to say it. It was actually a question on my PhD exams. The professor held up that word and I had to pronounce it. It's a male god of sun and of war. Definitely became the favorite god of the Mexica, who are in Tenochtitlan. Remember that these gods will be in many different Altepets understandings of the world, in often a very similar location. But reverence or rituals for certain gods might go up or down for other gods. So you can see he has the fire serpent in his hand. Yes, he was one of the major contenders among the gods. Number two among the great four, Tezcatlipoca, is a very interesting one. Also male, sometimes considered a little older, but he's associated with kind of darkness, night sky, hurricanes. He's always in black, and he rises up. By the way, since the Mayan times, to become bigger and bigger. Sorry about that. Had to cough. And he's kind of vague, and he's all around the place in the activities he is doing. So he's a harder one to pin down, but he's around, helping humans out here, perhaps stopping natural disease or plagues there. But he's definitely known for his mirrors, his obsidian mirrors that represent him. Number three are Tlaloc and Chalchiuhtlicue. There you go. Of rain and water. Tlaloc, you will find there on the left as the god of rain, which of course is very important for fertility and life, not only for humans but animals, and of course food or corn. So one of the major gods. And Chalchiuhtlicue, couldn't do it two times, kind of really was involved in it as well. She's a woman, and she gets the streams and the water flowing to the food that they should get to, so that everyone can stay alive, the humans. Now, not one of the big four are Xipe Totec. I bring Xipe Totec up because the lord of the flayed person was often used in the religious rituals for spring, for the beginning of life again. And Xipe Totec is a pretty famous one of the gods. The humans, when they would give reverence to the god of the flayed one, would in fact flay the skin off a sacrificial victim, and then the priest would wear that flayed skin over their own body and do the appropriate rituals. This is also famous in Mexica history, where according to their history, this is what early Mexica leaders did to a princess who was sent to them from a neighboring Altepet for her marriage. Also, not one of the great four, Tlazolteotl. Ooh, real good one here to show you how the gods work in all sorts of directions. Tlazolteotl, as you can see here, she's a woman, and she is the eater of filth, or the destroyer of garbage. And so it's interesting they understand that part of these complex cosmological cycles is entities that need to clean up and absorb and get rid of the negative out there. And so Tlazolteotl is a fascinating god as well. Now the fourth one that wasn't included, that you don't get a visual for, is Quetzalcoatl. And so between Quetzalcoatl and the other three that I mentioned, a large portion of the religious ritual account ceremonies and the ritual calendar were connected to. Now, in the section on the hierarchy and the activities, the males that would do stuff and the females that would do stuff, and then it starts going on and even give you a humongo table 6.3, right? You don't have to memorize it. You don't have to memorize it, but you should look at it. And what you should see as you look at a few of the months, you can see how they're adding the cycle of life and the varieties of life into their ritual calendar. And so they expect in a 260-day manner and certainly in a 365-day manner to repeat for 52 years these cycles. But that's what they're kind of imagining, but they're also at the same time super complicated, which is why you can have charts like 6.3 that go on and on and on and on. So I'm going to back up and kind of show you what's going on. So the excuse me, I gotta try this one again. Tonapuwali is the 260-day ritual calendar, and as you can see, it's on the upper right. And so you would go 1 through 13 with 20 different symbols. And again, because you're using 13, the lowest common multiple will be 13 times 20, and so it repeats every 260 days. So depending on the number and the symbol and the combination of the number and the symbol, right, determined what types of rituals needed to be done, whether they're for gods high up the vertical space or gods down the vertical space, so on and so forth. Okay, and then they also organized themselves by the calendar on the lower right, which they had 18 months of 20 days. 18 months of 20 days. And again, like the ritual calendar, they understood the annual, solar calendar to mean different things about temperatures and winds and rains and the like. For those of you who are good at math, you'll notice there are 5 days left if you use this system for your yearly calendar, solar calendar. And so they added 5 unlucky days at the end of the calendar year, which of course you had better not go out or something was going to get you. So you have if you imagine a 260-day calendar saying something, then the 365-day calendar saying something, then those two somethings, again, exponentially can be combined religiously to mean more and more about good omens, bad omens for certain people, for other people, and the like. Then these two continue. Again, the solar calendar for the third bullet point has an added year attached to it. So you don't not only have a month and a day from the 365, but you have a year. And of course, the year contains 2 parts, numbers and symbols, which when combined add more and more to the world of possible meanings that it takes. And so over those 100 years or so that the Mexica are at the top of the Aztec Empire before conquest, they would be adding and adding understandings about when and where and how the rituals should be in fact carried out. And that's what the section talks a bit about excuse me, the priestly schedules. I want you to see that also outside of the official priestly groups, there were, black market priests. That's just me making up a word. There were diviners who would sell their fortune-telling powers, on the open market. And so people were especially interested in their destiny, the destiny of their children, And believe it or not, they are often interested in getting help with making someone fall in love with them, or, of course, the opposite, making someone go away. This divination, just was understood as part of life by the Aztec government, but they were always a little suspicious of it. That is for sure. And if the only thing I guess we didn't add to the how complex the understandings of what's happened and what will happen and how religion is all tied, the complex interaction between humans and the cosmology through their religious views, I'm going to rephrase that, was constantly on their mind. And if you add to that any sort of rare, um, you know, Earth event, or space, I guess, like a comet, right, or an earthquake, then that in fact would show them not only that this interaction is alive and well, but would make them think, what do they need to do next? Um, so that is chapter 6 at the high level. Again, it's a complex, dangerous, ambiguous, capricious world out there, but having received the knowledge and developed the knowledge of all the history of the gods and what the gods need and what this and that means, then they attempted to plug themselves into this system in what they would understand to be the appropriate or congruent way. And so, whether it's sweeping the temple steps, or if it's involved in certain chanting on a certain day in a certain month by a certain group of people, or the new fire ceremony, or so on and so forth, these were all, as they understood it, connected to keeping their place semi-secure, secure enough in this complex, hostile world.